The diner's front window held December like a mirror, the cold pressing flat against the glass, while the heat inside smelled of bacon grease and old coffee, and the particular sourness of a radiator that had been running since October. Mara moved between table 4 and the service counter with the careful economy of someone who had learned not to waste a step, a pot of decaf in her right hand and a mental count of her remaining tables in the back of her mind. $14 an hour, $940 due on the 1st. Lily's ear infection medication, $43 at the pharmacy on Clement Street, because the cheaper generic had made her sick last time, and Mara was not willing to learn that lesson twice. She had been on her feet since 6 in the morning. It was not yet 2 in the afternoon. The man at the corner booth had been there 40 minutes without ordering. He wore a clean canvas jacket that had seen better use, and his hands sat flat on the table the way hands sit when someone is waiting for something they expect will be unpleasant. Mara refilled his water glass without being asked, because that was how she worked, and she clocked his eyes tracking the door. She had learned a long time ago that a man watching a door was a man waiting for a conversation he had not chosen. She thought nothing more of it. She had her own problems. The problems had a name, though she rarely used it anymore. Dex Farrow had been out of her life for 4 years and 11 months, give or take the 2 weeks she'd spent, 32 years old and newly pregnant, staring at a second-hand test strip in the bathroom of her studio on Avery Street, while the radiator in that apartment made the same sound the one here made. He had vanished into what she only understood later were debt problems, and she had let him vanish. She had not told him about Lily. She had not told anyone much at all. Lily was 4 years old now. She had her father's mouth and her mother's patience and absolutely no one's sense of personal danger, which meant she walked directly up to large dogs and strangers with equal confidence and zero instinct for self-preservation. Mara had been compensating for this with a small GPS tracker sewn into the zipper pull of Lily's winter coat, a purchase she'd made in October after a bad dream and a worse week, and which she tested every Tuesday morning before school drop-off, just to be certain the battery still held. The man in the canvas jacket stood up when the door opened. The person who came in was not large. He was medium height, dressed in a dark wool coat that cost more than Mara's monthly rent, moving through the diner's warmth with the kind of loose certainty that said he had never once in his adult life needed to hurry. He was maybe 30, maybe 35. He sat down across from the man in the canvas jacket without removing his coat. And within 30 seconds, the man in the canvas jacket's shoulders had risen to his ears and his hands had come off the table entirely. Mara took Table 7's order. She did not need to watch the corner booth to know that the temperature of the room had changed. She was carrying 2 plates of eggs to Table 3 when she heard Dex's name. Not from the corner booth. From outside. Through the pass-through window behind the counter, she could see the parking lot. And in the parking lot, leaning against a gray sedan with his phone loose in his hand, was Dex Farrow himself, looking older and thinner than she remembered him, with the particular fidgeting energy of someone who has not slept cleanly in a while. He had not seen her yet. He was looking at his phone. She set the eggs down, told the Table 3 she'd be right back, walked to the service entrance, which opened onto the lot, and stepped outside into the cold. "You have to leave," she said. He looked up, and something moved across his face that she could not name. Equal parts guilt and the old easy confidence she had once been foolish enough to find appealing. "Mara," he said, "you look like hell." 4 years of silence. That was what he opened with. "You have until I count to 5, she said. "And then I go back inside and call someone. I need to talk to you. There's a situation." He pushed off the car. I've got people after me, and it turns out the thing they actually want is a name I used as collateral. Your name, I borrowed against you, which I know how that sounds, and I know you're angry. But I need a few days to sort this out, and it would be a real problem for both of us if you could just... My name, she said. It's a formality, on paper. I didn't think they'd actually come to you. They were supposed to come to me, but... Get out of this parking lot. She was very calm. She had learned a particular kind of calm in the 4 years since he'd left. A calm that came from having no margin at all and needing to make every decision cleanly. Get out and don't come back here. He started to say something else. She went back inside. The man in the wool coat was watching her from the corner booth. She did not look at him again for another 20 minutes. Then the man in the canvas jacket said something too loud. Something about $62,000 and the terms being non-negotiable and a woman's name on a ledger. And the other tables went quiet the way tables go quiet when they sense something that has nothing to do with their eggs. Mara set down the coffee pot, turned to the corner booth, and said, with complete steadiness, "Sir, I'll need to ask you to take this outside." The man in the canvas jacket looked at her the way men looked at women who were not supposed to have opinions. "Nobody asked you, sweetheart." "This is my workplace," she said. "Those are my customers. I'm asking you to leave. Your workplace." He said it like it was a punchline. Dex Farrow's girl, working a diner on Clement Street. You know what you're worth to the people he owes? Less than the 62 he burned. You're collateral that doesn't even cover the interest. He leaned back with the wide-shouldered ease of someone who had never been told to stop. "Sit down, honey. I'll get to you when I'm done." What stopped her from answering was not fear. It was the fact that the man in the wool coat had put his hand very gently on the edge of the table, stood up and said, in a voice no louder than a normal conversation, "Leave." One word. The canvas jacket man's mouth closed. "Leave this building," the man in the wool coat said. "Don't come back. Tell whoever sent you that the debt on the Farrow name has been absorbed. Tell them Stephen Rodriguez said so." He paused for one beat, long enough for the information to land. "Go now." The canvas jacket man went, not with dignity. He went the way water goes when a drain opens, fast and in a direction he had not expected. The diner's ambient noise returned slowly, one conversation at a time. Mara watched him leave. Then she looked at the man still standing at the corner booth and understood, with cold clarity, that she had just traded one problem for another. If you've ever watched a woman try to decide whether to thank someone or run from them, you know exactly what Mara's face did in that moment. It would mean everything if you stuck around, because this is where the story actually starts. Stephen Rodriguez did not try to explain himself. He sat back down, pulled a business card from his coat pocket, set it on the edge of the table and said, "The man outside, is he Lily's father?" Mara's heart made one very distinct movement inside her chest. "You know my daughter's name," she said. "I know Dex Farrow's file," he said. "Your name is in it as collateral on a $62,000 debt. The file mentions a child." He looked at her directly, no performance in it. I asked a factual question. "He doesn't know her," Mara said. "He never has. And she's none of his business and none of yours." "That's fair," he said. He did not press it. He drank the coffee she'd brought him 40 minutes ago, which had gone cold. And he didn't complain about that either. He left a $50 tip on a check that had amounted to $3.20, and he walked out of the diner without looking back. The card on the table had a phone number and a name and nothing else. Thomas arrived the following morning at 7:45, which was 15 minutes before Mara's shift started. He was wearing a better suit than anyone had any business wearing on a Tuesday in December, and he addressed her by her full name, asked if she had 2 minutes, and proceeded to explain, in the tone of someone reading from a prepared and thoroughly organized document, that a furnished apartment on the 22nd floor of a building on Harrington Street had been made available for her and her daughter at no cost, with a grocery delivery already scheduled for Thursday. "No," Mara said. "Of course," Tomas said, as if she had said something reasonable. "Is there a concern I can address?" "I'm not going to owe anyone anything." "There is no debt," he said. "Mr. Rodriguez absorbed the Faro obligation from the network's ledger this morning. There is no debt attached to your name, and there is nothing being asked in return for the apartment." He produced a folded document and set it on the pass-through counter. "This is the lease transfer, your name only. No co-signer. Mr. Rodriguez is not listed." She did not touch the document. "She's 4, Mara said. "My daughter. She is 4 years old and she goes to preschool on Dunmore Street, and she has an ear infection that is finally getting better. And I am not going to uproot her life because some man decided to absorb a debt I never agreed to." "The man who came in yesterday," Tomas said carefully, "works for a faction that does not respect Mr. Rodriguez's current instructions. He will come back. When he does, he will not be addressing you from across a table." He held her gaze without apology. "The apartment has a security rotation. Your daughter's school on Dunmore Street is inside the Eastern Network's territory. She would have coverage there. Here, she does not." Mara looked at him for a long time. She thought about the tracker in Lily's coat zipper pull, which she tested every Tuesday, and about the fact that it was Tuesday, and she had tested it this morning and thought it was enough. "Until the situation resolves," she said. "Not permanently." "Of course," Tomas said again. They moved on a Wednesday. It took 2 trips in Tomas's sedan. Lily spent the drive pressed to the window with her nose flattened against the glass, watching the city change from narrow streets to wider ones to the glass and granite block of Harrington Street. And when the elevator opened on the 22nd floor, she walked directly to the floor-to-ceiling windows and put both palms against the cold glass and said, "Mama, Mama, look at all the lights." Mara stood in the center of the apartment's main room, which had a stocked refrigerator, soft clothes in a closet in sizes she had not given anyone, and a window seat in the second bedroom already fitted with a reading lamp and a small bookshelf. And she thought, someone spent time thinking about a 4-year-old's room. She thought, that costs more than this month's $940, and I should not feel anything about that. She thought about the reading lamp specifically for about 30 seconds, and then she stopped thinking and started unpacking. Stephen came on Friday evening. He knocked. He waited in the doorway until she invited him in. He had brought a paper bag from the Thai place on the corner, 2 portions, and he asked if Lily had eaten. "She ate at 5, Mara said. "She goes to bed at 7:30. "I'll leave the extra in the bag," he said. And he set it on the kitchen counter and sat down at the table, and did not make any moves to take up more space than the chair required. Lily appeared from the hallway in her socks, dragging a stuffed rabbit by its ear, and looked at him with the frank assessment of a person who has not yet learned to pretend she isn't staring. "What's your name?" she asked. "Stephen," he said. She considered this. "I'm Lily. Do you want to see my room? It has a lamp." He looked at Mara. She gave him nothing, just watched. He looked back at Lily and said, "I'd like that." What she did not expect standing in the kitchen with the paper bag from the Thai place going warm against her hip, was the sound of Lily explaining the lamp's functions in enormous detail, and beneath it, a man's voice asking questions that were genuine, not performed, not the particular cadence of an adult managing a child, but the cadence of someone actually listening. Mara Rodriguez did not allow herself to think the name yet. She would not allow it for a long time. She was still Mara Voss, still had $940 due in 3 weeks, even though someone had already paid it. Still had the $14 hourly shift tomorrow and the ear infection follow-up on Monday. Still had every practical reason to keep the distance she had maintained since she was old enough to know distance was a form of survival. The second time Dex reduced her, it was in the parking lot of the Dunmore Street preschool on a Thursday, which was one of the 2 mornings a week she dropped Lily off herself before her shift. He was leaning on a car she didn't recognize, and when he saw her, he straightened up with the same practiced ease, the same smile that had never quite reached the right place. "I heard you moved," he said. "Rodriguez's building. That's a step up from Avery Street." The smile sharpened slightly. "What are you doing for that exactly?" She adjusted the strap of Lily's backpack without answering. "I'm serious. I've known this guy's reputation for 3 years. He doesn't do charity. What's he getting?" He let the implication hang in the cold air between them. "Take your hands off the car," she said. Because he had put one hand on her door handle, he removed the hand. "I just need you to tell him we're square. Put a word in, that's all I'm asking." "I don't know what you're owed," she said. "I don't know what you owe. I don't know anything about you anymore, and I am not going to speak on your behalf to anyone." She took Lily's hand. "Move?" He moved. She felt his eyes on her back until the preschool door closed between them. She told Tomas about it that afternoon, because Tomas had given her his number for exactly this kind of information. And she watched his expression do something careful and contained that she had come to understand. Meant he was filing it for a conversation she would not be present for. The third time Dex reduced her was through a report Tomas relayed to her 2 days later, phrased so precisely that she understood it was a verbatim quote and not a summary. Dex had told someone, somewhere in the network's territory, that Mara was a nobody who'd gotten lucky, a diner girl who'd figured out how to fall upward, and that whatever Stephen thought he was getting, she would be back behind a counter in 6 months. Tomas relayed this in the same tone he used for grocery delivery schedules. He did not add commentary. He watched her face register it, and then he said, "Mr. Rodriguez is aware." The reveal came on a Saturday in the late afternoon, when the apartment's light had gone from winter white to the particular amber that comes just before the city outside starts to glow. Lily had been showing Stephen, who had begun appearing on Friday evenings with quiet regularity, her collection of drawings from preschool. They were pinned above the desk Tomas had sourced, and she narrated each one with the seriousness of an architect presenting plans. The one at the end of the row was a photograph, not a drawing. It was printed on regular paper, the way photographs are when someone runs them through a home printer, and it showed a birthday cake with 4 candles on it, and Lily in a party hat, and a date printed in the corner by the camera's automatic timestamp. Stephen looked at the date for a long time. Then he looked at Lily. Lily said cheerfully, "That's my birthday. I'm 4. Mama cried, but she said it was happy crying." He was very still, the kind of stillness that costs something to maintain. Mara was standing in the kitchen doorway. She had not moved. She had known, in the way she had always known the things she was most afraid of, that this moment was somewhere in the near distance, and she had not planned for it, because planning for it would have required acknowledging what it meant. "Mara," he said. "I need to know," she said. I need you to tell me what you know about Dex and the timeline. I know when he entered the network's territory, Stephen said. I know the dates. She told him the conception date. She said it plainly, the way she said the things that hurt, because flinching did not make them hurt less. He sat with it for long enough that Lily got bored and went to get her rabbit. Then he said, in a voice that was not entirely level, "Why didn't he tell anyone?" "He didn't know," Mara said. "I never told him." Another long pause. "He knew," Stephen said. "He found out after. He told Tomas yesterday, under some encouragement, that he'd figured it out from the timing and decided it complicated things. The thing that moved through her then was not quite anger and not quite relief. It was the specific exhaustion of finding out that someone had known something about your child and decided it was an inconvenience. Dr. Reyes came the following Monday at Stephen's arrangement to the apartment. She was a small, silver-haired woman who moved with the efficiency of someone who had been practicing medicine in circumstances that didn't allow for waste. And she confirmed, after reviewing the dates Mara provided and the documentation she had from Lily's birth, that the timeline was clinically sufficient and that she had noted it as such. A formal test was referenced as pending, and something to be done properly when Lily was ready to understand it. Dr. Reyes left. Mara made coffee and did not offer Stephen any, and he did not ask for it. He sat at the kitchen table with the kind of weight a person carries when they have been handed something they did not know they had lost. The intimacy between them built the way things build when two people are both being careful and both beginning to stop. It was not dramatic. It was a hand on her shoulder when she was loading the dishwasher and had gone quiet for too long. It was the Friday evening she fell asleep on the couch and woke to find the lamp in Lily's room turned off and a blanket from the closet, the good fleece one, draped across her. It was the night she cried, quietly, with her back to him. And he did not tell her it was fine, but he put his hand between her shoulder blades and left it there. It was the evening she turned from the window and said, "I'm afraid of needing this." And he said without looking away, "I know. I'm afraid of losing it." And that was the closest either of them came, for a long time, to naming what they had. She was honest with herself, in the way she was honest about everything. She wanted him. Not in spite of what he was, but because what he was included the man who sat on the floor of a 4-year-old's room and genuinely listened to an explanation of a lamp. She did not say it out loud. She said it in the way she turned toward him in small rooms, in the way her body had stopped bracing when he came near. He held her one evening with a care that made her think of the word reverent, a word she had never used in relation to herself. And when he said her name in the dark, it sounded like something he had been saving. And she understood that she was no longer managing a perimeter, but standing inside one. Stephen, for his part, kept thinking about the photograph on the wall above the desk, the birthday cake with 4 candles, the date in the corner. There was a specific kind of accounting that he had never kept before, and he found himself doing it now. Measuring years the way you measure them when they have cost you something, wondering what they would have looked like with different information. He did not let himself say any of this to Mara. He stored it the way he stored most things he didn't know what to do with yet. The morning of the 22nd of December, Mara's phone rang at 8:47. It was the preschool on Dunmore Street. Lily had not arrived. Mara had put Lily in the sedan with Tomas at 8:15 for the school run. She called Tomas. He answered on the first ring, and she could hear by his voice, before he said anything, that something had already gone wrong. He had been called away from the route by a message that turned out to be fabricated, a piece of staging precise enough that she felt the calculation in it. And when he had reached the school on his own, Lily was not there. The person who should have been waiting for her was not there. 2 staff members had seen a dark car at the pickup line, a woman with a clipboard who seemed like an aide, a hand holding Lily's, and the whole arrangement looking ordinary enough that no one had stopped it. Mara was already on the tracker app by the time Tomas finished talking. The unit in Lily's coat zipper pull was still active. It was moving slowly, northeast on a street she recognized as the edge of the Port District. She sent the coordinates to Tomas without speaking, because her throat had closed completely and speaking was not something she was capable of at that moment. She sent them to Stephen's number as well, from the card she had kept in the back of her phone case since the first week. She was in a car inside 4 minutes. Not with Tomas, who was already moving toward the port. With another one of Stephen's people, a quiet man named Ortega, who drove with the focused efficiency of someone who treated a city as a series of geometric problems to solve. She kept the tracker open in her palm. She said the cross streets when the signal changed direction. Ortega relayed them without commentary. She would think later, many times, about what it meant that she had the tracker. She would think about the Tuesday morning she'd sewn the pull onto Lily's zipper, and the Tuesday morning she tested it, and the particular category of fear that makes a parent prepare for things they pray will never happen. She would think about the gap between preparation and the moment the preparation is actually needed, and how they feel like completely different countries. The Port District had warehouses that backed up to a chain-link service road, and it was there that the tracker signal had stopped. Ortega parked 2 blocks back. Mara was out of the car before he could say anything to stop her, moving along the service road's edge. And she could hear before she could see anything. Lily's voice. Lily was crying, not screaming. Crying with the controlled, exhausted sound of a child who had been frightened for a while and had run out of the energy for the sharp kind of terror. She was saying, "Don't cry, Daddy will fix it," in the way 4-year-olds say things they have heard adults say in different contexts. And Mara's chest split open cleanly. The faction that had taken Lily had made 2 miscalculations. The first was that they had underestimated how quickly the coordinates would reach Stephen's network. The second was that they had staged this in the Eastern Territory, which was not, regardless of any rival's ambitions, their territory at all. Mara did not see what happened in the warehouse. She was at the chain-link fence on the service road side when she heard Lily say her name. And then Stephen was there, coming through the service entrance with Lily in his arms and her rabbit, somehow still clutched in Lily's hand. And he brought her daughter to her with the focused, unhurried movement of a man who had made a promise and was now completing it. And he placed Lily in Mara's arms and said nothing at all. Lily put both arms around her mother's neck. She said into Mara's hair, "I told them Daddy would fix it, and he did." Stephen was very still. Mara was not capable of speaking for a long moment. She pressed her face against Lily's temple and breathed. There is a kind of silence between 3 people that says everything that sentences cannot hold. And this was that kind of silence. On a cold December morning, on a service road by the port, with the city going about its business on the other side of the chain-link fence. Dex was handled. Not dramatically, not with anything that needed to be described at length. He was removed from the situation the way a variable is removed from an equation when it has served its function. And Stephen absorbed the remainder of the $62,000 debt as a formal closing of accounts. Dex would not be back to a parking lot on Dunmore Street. He would not be back to the diner on Clement Street. He was aware of why. She went back to the diner 3 days later on Christmas Eve, because Mara was not the kind of person who called out of a shift without a concrete reason. She had a concrete reason, in the form of a 4-year-old who was fine and who had, In the 3 days since the warehouse, slept between her parents in a 22nd floor apartment with the lights of the city pressing against the windows. But the diner manager needed the shift covered, and Mara honored her commitments. The diner on Christmas Eve was the kind of half-full that comes from regulars and people with nowhere particular to go. A warm room against a cold street, the windows fogged at the edges, and the tree in the corner strung with lights that blinked in a rhythm that had never once matched anything. She had been there an hour when the door opened, and the room went quiet in the specific way it went quiet when Stephen came in. The air reorganizing itself as if the room understood something the people in it were still registering. He was with Tomas and 2 of his people, and they took the corner booth where the canvas jacket man had sat 3 weeks ago and where everything had started. And Mara brought them coffee the way she brought all her tables coffee, steady and automatic. And Stephen caught her hand before she could pull it back. Not hard. Gently. Tomas looked at the middle distance. The 2 other men studied their menus with the concentration of people who were being deliberately unseen. "You're working Christmas Eve," Stephen said. "The manager needed the shift," she said. "Mara," he said. Not a correction, not an argument. Just her name in the register he used for things that mattered. "I have an hour left," she said, "and then I'll come home." She heard herself say it. She heard the word and what it meant in her own mouth, the particular permanence of it, and she did not take it back. He let go of her hand. She went back to work. When her manager came out from the kitchen at noon and saw the booth, there was a specific change in his expression, the kind of expression that occurs when a man who has never had reason to recalibrate an assumption is suddenly required to. He had been the one, back in October, who told her that maybe a second shift would be harder to justify with a kid, who'd cut her hours and then restored them when she'd stood in his office and asked him directly why. He had never reduced her the way Dex had, nothing voiced so crudely, but he had managed her the way people manage someone they have already decided is interchangeable. He came to the corner booth himself. He addressed her by her last name, then corrected it to Mara, then stood very straight and said he hoped everything was going well. Stephen said with complete pleasantness, "She's managed this room by herself for 3 hours this morning. She's the reason your Christmas Eve is running." He lifted his cup. "The coffee's good." The manager said something agreeable. Then he said to Mara that she should head out whenever she was ready, that he had it from here, and that, of course, her full shift would be paid. She took her coat from the hook behind the counter and walked out of the diner into December. And Stephen was beside her, and she did not look back at the window. That evening, Christmas Eve, the building on Harrington Street was doing what buildings do when the people inside them are celebrating. Music from someone's floor below, someone else's tree visible in a window across the way. The city outside wearing its lights like it meant them. Lily was in her room with her rabbit and 4 new books from the shelf Tomas had quietly restocked, and a small sugar cookie with red sprinkles that she had been allowed as a concession to the season. She had been asleep for 40 minutes. Mara stood on the balcony off the main room, 22 floors above the street, the cold clean and sharp after the diner's warmth. The city below was lit in every direction, gold and white and the particular blue-white of the newer buildings, and the sky above had gone to the specific dark of December, in a city where there is no true darkness. The balcony door behind her opened and closed. Stephen put his coat around her shoulders, not his arm, his coat. She pulled it tighter, and he stood beside her, and they looked at the city together without speaking. After a while, he said, "She said it at the warehouse before I got there." "I know," Mara said. "She thinks she was talking about you." "She was right," he said. She turned to look at him. He was looking at the city, his jaw at the angle it held when he was thinking through something precisely. She understood that he was telling her something he did not know how to say another way, and she received it in the way she received the things that mattered, without deflection. "I want to be her father," he said. On paper, with her name, formally. "I want it to be correct." Mara was quiet for a moment. "She already thinks you are," she said. Something in the line of his shoulders released. Just slightly. The smallest drop, barely visible in the dark. Tomas appeared at the glass door behind them, just visible inside the warmth of the main room. And he said, with the faintest alteration of his customary procedural tone, "Mrs. Rodriguez?" And then he stopped, having apparently decided that was the sentence, and stepped back to give them the balcony. Mara did not correct him. She heard the name in her own chest and held it there, still and warm, the way you hold something you have been careful with for a long time and have finally decided to keep. The city went on below them. Christmas Eve and all its noise, 1,000 lit windows in every direction. And inside the apartment on the 22nd floor, a 4-year-old slept with her rabbit and her lamp, and the accumulated safety of a perimeter that held. Mara pulled Stephen's coat closer at the collar. He put his hand over hers. Below them, on the street, a car moved slowly through the lit dark, and the city made its ordinary sounds, and none of it reached them.